Hi everybody, today I'm here to talk about Dark Souls 1. But before we do that, I do want to talk a little bit about my history with the Souls games, because I believe more so than any other gaming franchise out there, your history within Souls-likes and Souls games can define how you see these. As has been seen before with people jumping into Lies of P and playing it like Dark Souls, or people jumping into Sekiro and playing it like Dark Souls essentially. And for me, my history with Souls games starts all the way back in the distant year of 2013, where my stepbrother brought home a copy of Demon Souls for the PS3. And I watched him play it in awe, looking at the big and scary monsters and him absolutely glitching his way through the game using the infinite money glitch and completely breaking it. And trying it myself, I didn't quite find it fun because it beat my ass and sent me back to the respawn point so many times it was insane. And no, I didn't do any bosses, I never got that far. And you see, fast forward a couple of years later and I see a trailer for Dark Souls 3. Knowing that my stepbrother loved Dark Souls, I wanted to impress him by being good at it, so I purchased a copy of Dark Souls 3. I got my ass fucking hammered. And what I mean by that is that game kicked me down hard. My first playthrough lasted me about 100 hours after a 6-month long break because I couldn't get over the Boreali Valley Beast. His second boss fucking again kicked me. I wasn't good at it at all. And you see, a couple of years later I see a trailer for this game called Code Vein, which I had an interest in because, well, I don't like anime. I love the art style. I usually just really dislike, everything else about anime. But that's a lie. I don't dislike anime at all, but I don't watch a lot of anime. I do find Code Vein to be interesting visually, and especially the monster design spoke to me after playing Persona and really liking it. So I went in and didn't get Code Vein. I darked Shadowkeep for Destiny, but then Code Vein hit a Humble Bundle at a point where I had a Humble Bundle membership, so I got the game, I played it, and I absolutely loved it. Now, from there, it was just a matter of time. I quickly got myself a copy of Still Rising when it came out, played it, loved it. I got myself a copy of Elden Ring, played about 6 hours of it, loved it, and forgot about it because of Destiny 2 The Witch Queen. Then went back to it and finished it and fucking loved it. Got myself a copy of Lies of P, played it on the channel, loved it. Got myself a copy of Lords of the Fallen, played it, and let's not talk about Lords of the Fallen. And then I got myself a copy of Dark Souls, because it has all come full circle. I absolutely adore Souls-likes now. I really do want to get more into these games. And for me, starting with Dark Souls 1, I feel like it's a chance for me to experience what might be one of the most influential games of all time. And I think it's important to cover that with the respect it deserves. Because you see, Dark Souls isn't just a super influential game. It's a game that has done a lot of good for a lot of people, both in a mental way and directly, it has physically made them better people. And I can attest to that. Because you see, Dark Souls is a world that doesn't care about you. It will kick you, it will bash your head in while you're screaming, and it will do it again and again and again, and you'll get into boss fights that kick your ass again and again and again, but through persistence you can get over practically any challenge the game throws at you. And I have managed to repost about how this has affected people. One that has always stuck with me is how it cured a guy's depression, because it taught him that no matter what, no matter the challenges he's facing, if he just keeps trying again and again and again, he can eventually overcome them. And I think because of that, Dark Souls is a game that for me is hard to cover, because I want to do it with the respect it deserves. I don't just want to make a video, put a video out there that absolutely shits on it or absolutely talks bad about it if there's nothing to talk bad about. So I really wanted to understand Dark Souls. That's the mentality I went in with when I got myself Dark Souls. And I'm happy to say I fucking adore this game. I went in expecting to play one playthrough and not really find it anything crazy, you know, just find it to be another Souls game. I mean, it's fairly old by now, you know. I didn't expect it to blow me away, but in truth it did. I ended up going for all achievements, and doing that I have every weapon in the game that is needed for the Knight's Honor achievement. I have all pyromancies. I've completed the game 2.5 times. I have shown my friend how to play Dark Souls. I have played the DLC. I love Dark Souls. But my reasons for liking it might not necessarily be the same reasons that you have for liking it. So I'm gonna list out my reasons for liking it, like the 4 big things that we're gonna cover in this video, because these are the things that for me makes this game incredibly special in comparison to anything, both looking back now at the time, but also anything that is out currently. But before we get into that, I do want to mention that I set myself some rules for the playthrough, because I have of course seen speedrunners complete Dark Souls. I love watching the guard run. I have seen the guy who completed like all the Souls no hit back to back to back at level 1. Crazy stuff. But watching that obviously taught me a couple of tricks. There's also been, you know, just the general Souls runs, and watching my stepbrother play it and other friends play Dark Souls. I've seen my fair share of glitches. Let me put it like that. And I also wanted to experience some of those. So I decided to make the rule my first ever playthrough. So my normal, no like new game plus things, no nothing. The first time I booted in, I was not gonna use any glitches to get myself through the game. My second playthrough, however, I was allowed to fully break the game as much as I wanted to, using the infinite money glitch, using anything that I could find to beat the game. Mainly because I think some of the fun in the game is learning those tricks. And while I didn't master all of it, I won't lie, I did master the, you know, inventory overlay over the brightness screen so you can duplicate souls infinitely. And yeah, I think it's an incredibly fun little thing you can do, and I'm happy that I got to try it. So yeah, that was the rules going in. Now, this is also why I say this is technically the second time I record this, because my first video on Dark Souls was actually finished by now, and everything was done, and then all my files corrupted, including all gameplay, so everything has been re-recorded. So if something doesn't add up, that's because of it, as I simply haven't had the time to record 2.5 full playthroughs again. So that being said, let's get into what makes Dark Souls super special to me. Now, what makes Dark Souls special, I think, as I've said, entirely depends on the person that is playing. I think it entirely depends when in your life you're playing it, and it entirely depends on the perspective you come in with. For me, the things that I noticed really stood out to me from my playthroughs of Dark Souls was the visuals, the combat, the exploration, the world lore, and its themes, and how it all sort of ties together. I think those things are what really makes Dark Souls, well, Dark Souls. And I think it's some of the things it does better than practically every other game currently on the market, even to this day. And I think that's because of FromSoft design. I think it's because of the way that the world is very clearly unforgiving towards you. And I think it's through a lot of other things. And I want to delve into that a little bit, so let's do it. Now, starting out talking about visuals, I think Dark Souls has beautiful visuals. It doesn't mean that it's graphically the most updated game ever because it's a game from 2011. It doesn't mean that it's super fucking pretty. Even if you're getting the remastered, you're not getting anything that's graphically outstanding. However, what you are getting is something that's insanely pretty, because graphics doesn't mean pretty. All that graphics means is that it looks smooth and clean. However, how a game comes together visually is always way more important than the graphical quality of the textures, right? And Dark Souls comes together incredibly fucking well. Not only through its beautiful world and how it comes together, but also through the stories it tells. Because From Software often does that. They do visual storytelling. And it's the same way you read into the themes, right? You don't just get it thrown into your face. I'm gonna use another game I really like, that being God of War, as an example. God of War has a fantastic story that's all being told to you. Dark Souls has a fantastic story that you have to dig for. You have to find your own meaning within it and find out where you belong within that story. And I think that's an incredibly special thing. And it's a lot harder to do than just writing a story, because FromSoft has to have the designers make a world where you can feel like you're a part of, that you can feel like you are telling your story in, if that makes sense. Both through the different weapons you're using, but also directly through learning about the world. I'm gonna use Solaire as an example. Now, I don't know if you've watched the Vadia Vidi. I'm sorry if I butchered the name, I probably did. Love the man, best videos on Souls lore out there. But I don't know if you've watched his video on, in my opinion, you know, the best character, Solaire. But in those videos, you can see how he points out that, you know, Gwendolyn had 3 children, and you only see 2 of them, and the third he ordered every statue and so on to be destroyed. He speculates within the video that the third child is Solaire, because Solaire is incredibly powerful, like, and we know that because he's outright there for practically every boss fight you can summon him for, right? Like, he's there for a lot of them if you're using summons. And, you know, that is very fucking cool. Like, there's a lot of small details like that that From Software has. Just like how if you join the Gravelord's servants, you get the Gravelord's sword, which visually looks like Gravelord Nido, but in sword form. It looked like you took something out of his stomach and you're like, yep, I'm gonna stab you with that. And it is an incredibly cool sword that I use for most of my game, no lie. But, like, I think that is incredibly cool. And I think it comes together in both the boss designs, I think it comes in through the weapons as well. Because you can get the boss weapons. And not only can you get the boss weapons, but you can get most of the NPC's weapons and spells and so on. As an example, you can get Solaire's entire armor set, as far as I know, and his sword. And I think that's really quite cool, honestly. Because it allows you to not only express yourself, you know, so you're one of the Sun Bros, which you better be. I'm just saying, Warriors of the Sunlight, best Covenant. But aside from that, I think it's just an incredibly cool little thing. And I think it ties perfectly into the world and how the themes come together. Because the world and lore of Dark Souls is incredibly grim and dark. To use, in my opinion, one of the better examples when you use Steve the Scaleless. Again, I'm gonna shamelessly steal Valiant Vidi's, you know, video and story there, because he is the soul tube I go to. Like, Souls stuff, when it comes to lore, he is the one I go to. And he points out Steve the Scaleless, you know, as we hear in the opening, had his immortality robbed of him at birth. Like, he didn't have that immortality that the other dragons had through their stone scales. That's why he's the Scaleless. So he betrayed his own kind in a combination of jealousy and whatnot. And he was rewarded dukedom for it, and an archive where he could research his mortality. However, one of the things that probably wasn't directly, you know, in his contract was that he is also kidnapping women and using them to experiment on. Matter of fact, those weird slime dudes that crawl off of you in the Duke's archives are, you know, failed experiments. They have these women who have been experimented on and it failed. And one of the ways you can see that in the game, and one of the coolest, smallest details, is if you stand close to the stone golems, like the crystal golems that Seath uses, you can hear women crying. Like, isn't that fucking cool? Not the women crying part, like, that's horrible, like, the story is horrible, but isn't it fucking cool that they went that far into detail to convey a story? I think it's so dope. I think it is so dope. And some of these things could be people reading too much into it, obviously. But I think it's an incredibly cool thing, especially because, in my personal opinion, Dark Souls has 2 themes. The themes being persistence through hardships even when the world is beating you down time and time again. And I think it is a pilgrimage, a connective, journey, helping each other, or being the dick that invades and punishes people for existing. And I believe that is sort of one of the big points in Dark Souls. And the reason why I'm pointing it out like that, let's just start with, the entire being punished. Dark Souls is an unforgiving world. The entire world of Dark Souls is unforgiving. And it's not just through, the game itself, but it's, it is to all its NPCs. All of the NPCs, all the characters you meet, and to you. And it shows it to you from the get-go. At the beginning of the game, Oscar throws your key and then proceeds to violently die. And, he was the first person that did something nice for you. Bro just threw your key and allowed you to escape the undead asylum, putting you on this journey. And it's the same for with every other NPC. If you finish their questlines, they all, without an exception, end up dead. And I think that's really, well, it's horrible, obviously, but it's a really nice way of conveying your point. The world is unforgiving. It's unforgiving in its combat, being that when you're fighting, you have to 100% commit to your attacks. There isn't any dodging out of it. Oh, you are attacking while the boss is attacking too fucking bad. And it's the same thing with healing, using items, practically anything else. Whereas latter entries within Soulsborne allowed you to, do things such as moving while you're drinking Estes. Dark Souls 1 doesn't do that. You are standing fucking still when you are drinking. And you are standing still for quite a bit of time. And I think things like that adds to the unforgiveness of the world. And it does in a way that I actually don't find to be super bad. I think it's an incredibly cool way of doing it. Because again, it tells its story through both its gameplay and the actual NPC stories and its design. It's all coming together to create this, visual story that you don't necessarily read, you don't get read to you, you don't get told, but you learn it through your trials and your tribulations, and you're coming through. And when it comes to the entire connectiveness of it, I think that comes through all of the different NPCs you can summon. The fact that you can get help in Dark Souls. Dark Souls doesn't have to be a game where you are beaten down to the ground. Don't be shy to use a summon. Don't be shy to get another player to help you out. Don't be shy to use a wiki. And I think it comes through in all levels of design as well. Because you see, there is the message system. The messages are literally what they sound like. They're small messages you can leave for your fellow players. You can see the bloodstains, where people died, how people died, what they did wrong, what you shouldn't do, and if something is a trap or if it isn't. And there are a lot of those things that just go again and again and again, and I think it is so cool. And like I said, I think that all brings in this connectivity that Dark Souls has that other games doesn't necessarily have. And I think it's also why you can say that Dark Souls is a pilgrimage for the player base. And with that being said, let's just talk a little bit more about combat, because I sort of skipped around along the points here because I got pretty passionate. But the combat is really something special. Like a lot of people have brought up, the entirety of the Souls combat can practically be called weighty, and I think that's an incredibly nice word for it. Everything is heavy, everything takes its sweet ass time, and there isn't any dodging meanwhile, because it wants you to commit to your attacks. And that's pretty fucking cool, because once you learn how to commit, once you learn when to commit, you can take that knowledge to most other games, both FromSoft and non-FromSoft, and you can start to apply the same techniques. But not only can you apply those techniques to games, but in real life as well. And again, I'm going to use Dark Souls 3 as an example because it's the one that I feel like taught me the most, as it's the one I started with. Dark Souls 3 is a game that largely taught me patience, because God, I used to get angry at games, but after getting angry at Dark Souls, I stopped. because there wasn't a point. I wouldn't win just because I was mad. I would win by persistence. And Dark Souls taught me that for beating me in the ass and allowing me to get my little boy booty kicked. Because at the time, I wasn't used to, committing to things when it came to games. I didn't commit to my attacks and my Far Cry or whatever. But in Dark Souls, I had to. And it made the game incredibly hard in comparison to other games at the time. But I think what is even cooler, in my opinion, is the fact that in Dark Souls 1, I played a playstyle I hadn't played before, being Sword and Shield. I did start out as a sorcerer, but I sort of also split into Sword and Shield gameplay because it was something I hadn't done. And I think Sword and Shield in Dark Souls 1 especially feels really, really good. Both the fact that you can parry attacks and you get this opening that essentially allows you to cheese the final boss of the game, just constantly spamming those parries and getting his big ass swing in, and then you just fucking slap him with the sword a couple of times. But also the fact that you can do it with practically any weapon in the game, be it great sword, great axe, great hammer. Things other games would normally be like, no, you need 2 hands for. Dark Souls is completely okay if you can commit the strength to it, if you can commit the stats to it, to allow you to do that, but with a shield meanwhile. And it has to be said, obviously, Dark Souls 1 doesn't have the same need for dual wielding that games like Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring has, right? Like, it doesn't have that option as frequently or really as readily available as Dark Souls 2 has, because in Dark Souls 2 there was a system introduced called power stance, where if you have 2 weapons, you have slightly better stats in them, then you can like literally dual them and you get an entirely new moveset. That wasn't in Dark Souls 1, it doesn't exist within the game, thus dual wielding isn't as good. However, it does look pretty cool, I won't lie, to have 2 swords at the same time. But, it's why I think a lot of the time you see people run around like two-handing, because you do get damage buffs for doing that. That doesn't mean that the combat is bad, it doesn't mean that the combat is broken, it just means that it's different from those games if you go back and play it, like I did. And I think that's an incredibly cool thing, honestly. I don't think that's bad at all. Now, it has to be said that obviously there are parts of the Dark Souls world that are not entirely finished. I don't like being negative in my videos a lot, but this is the one time I will allow myself to be negative towards this game. Lost Isleth is unfinished. There's no other words for it. It's trash, it's bad, it's dumb. It's not a good design for an arena, neither is the Centipede Demon, by the way. Centipede Demon shouldn't be in the game. But other than that, I think the rest of the game is actually fairly well designed. Both from a standpoint of this works, but also from a standpoint of the game being good. Lost Isleth is the exception, in the sense that Lost Isleth is the only area in the game where you don't just go in there and you have this like really neat arena and area to walk through. The entire arena is covered in lava. There's big dudes that are just a copy paste of the boss you just fought everywhere. And you basically just run through them most of the time. You can kill all of them with a bow if you really want to. But I don't understand why you would do that. It's a waste of time, don't bother. Just run past them. If you want the items, then do some death runs. But, it's not a good area. And FromSoft knows that, everybody knows that. However, the one I do find that gets a lot of weird critique is Tomb of the Giants. I didn't find Tomb of the Giants super annoying or bad. Yeah, there's less visibility, but just equip the Sunlight back at home and you'll be fine, do the quest line. Plus, it's Solaire. Why wouldn't you do his quest line? It's Solaire. He's cool, Now, that being said, I believe Dark Souls 1 is fantastic in its world design. I think it has great combat. I think the themes come together well. And that is all on top of the fact that the world is completely connected. And when I say completely connected, I really mean it. A good example is my first playthrough of Dark Souls. I started out running through Firelink Shrine. I ran out onto the Undead Berg, and about 30 minutes later, after beating the... no, not after beating. That was before beating the Bell Gargoyles. I saw a little platform and a little elevator I could step on, so I stepped on it, and I got taken back to Firelink Shrine. I think that is really cool. It gave me a moment where I was just sitting there like, okay, I have discovered something new. Because the entire world is like that. Like, everything is connected with each other in all different ways, and it gets an ecosystem where I get that there are people who say, you know, you have to run back too much, there's too much, you know, backtracking. I get that, I understand it. However, I also want to say that with the very, very few exceptions, the exceptions being specifically Blight Town, I don't think that's an issue. Because unless we are talking Blight Town because you have to wait on the fucking elevator and that takes forever, if you know where you're going, I feel like most of the time you can get there within 5-10 minutes. It's not a long fucking walk, it's not like you have to wait for 20 fucking hours here. Like, yeah, fast travel can make it faster, but it'll also ruin, in my opinion, a lot of the world. And it's I'm currently playing through Dark Souls 2, and it's one of the things that I actually really do miss playing through Dark Souls 2, is that interconnectivity. Now it's replaced with the fast travel in Dark Souls 2. And it's not bad, it's just not something that I'd like. I would say though, once you've gotten through Ornstein as mode once, like, allow people to carry it over, the like fast travel item over to New Game Plus. That's just my own opinion. But I kind of wish that they had kept that, because I think that's a really cool little design thing. I recently also watched the Joseph Anderson video on Elden Ring that split the community up, and after watching it, before I played Dark Souls 1, I didn't quite understand what he meant with the fact that he'd rather have had a world like Dark Souls 1, but bigger. Now I do, and I think I agree. I think I agree in the fact that I would have liked the idea of Dark Souls 1, with all these different areas that can be accessed in all sorts of different ways, that are all interconnected and all sort of that, right? But just bigger and more. I think I would have liked that a lot actually as well. And here's to hoping that the Elden Ring expansion is gonna be exactly that. But I think it's an incredibly cool world that unfortunately doesn't seem to be done again within the franchise. Now, I haven't played Dark Souls 3. Maybe Dark Souls 3 does that, and maybe I'll love it. But I haven't seen other people mention it. So I'm gonna assume that Dark Souls 1 is like the only game who really does that at the moment. And feel free to correct me, maybe Bloodborne does it as well. I can't tell, I haven't played Bloodborne either. It's on the list though. But yeah, I'm gonna list off a couple of notes that I couldn't really get in anywhere else for the rest of this video. I'm also gonna complain a little bit about the, you know, part of producing it, but the entire thing going corrupt by the end. So, you know, stay tuned for that if you want to. Otherwise, you've seen me talk a little bit about Dark Souls. At the end of the day, I think the game is fantastic. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to watch the rest of the video, just me talking about a couple of notes about this video and everything like that, then you can do that. And thank you for your time regardless. I think Dark Souls 1 is fantastic. Even now, it stands out as being one of the best games you can possibly buy for your money. I think it's an incredibly cool experience playing through, even in 2024. And if you haven't ever played Dark Souls, you owe it to yourself to play the game, especially if you like Elden Ring, especially if you like Lies of P. So, you know, go ahead and get it, because it is usually on sale. So yeah, let's just get into the notes. Note number 1, at the time of recording this video, I didn't know that, but I only found out about that upon reading a little bit about people's opinion on Reddit. And apparently there was a community event that was being hosted at the time called Return to Lordran, where people just go through Dark Souls 1. I think it is fucking cool to see a community for a game this will still do this sort of thing. I think it's incredibly nice, I think it's awesome to see, and I just wanted to, you know, drop in and say that's fucking cool. Second note is that I didn't play PvP as much. I will be covering PvP more on DS2 or Dark Souls 2, as I heard that was also the game where there are a more active PvP scene. And while I haven't invaded, I have been invaded a lot in DS2. I actually didn't get at all in DS1 or Dark Souls 1. I didn't get invaded, and I think that's a little bit weird, but I think it was pretty fun. And regardless, I still see there being fight tournaments and stuff also hosted in Dark Souls 1, and I think that's really, really dope. Honestly, if you don't know what they are, I highly recommend going and Googling, Dark Souls 1 fight tournament, or trying to find some video clips of it on YouTube. I think it's cute. I think it's really nice to see people going as ham as they have. And I think it's nice to see that there's still a community for a game that is, this old, because usually there isn't. Usually a game by this point would be dead and gone, with the only people playing it through the single player story or playing it for speedrunning purposes. And the fact that Dark Souls is one of the games that doesn't have that, I think is really nice. Secondly, I also want to say that I think that the Dark Souls community, to me at least, has been super kind. I haven't met a huge amount of assholes. The one time I did interact with another player, we waved at each other and he jumped off the map upon seeing the fact that I was completely new to the game. Like, homie actively, didn't want to fight somebody like me. He just wanted me to enjoy my time, and for that I first want to say thank you. And for the, secondly, I just want to say, to me, it proves that the Dark Souls community does have some wholesomeness. And yeah, I think the community has been incredibly helpful and nice, and when I've asked for help on Reddit specifically on what weapons people were using and whatnot, people answer without, get good. I don't think that exists as much anymore. But yeah, that being said, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm sorry about the, sort of video maybe not fitting entirely with what I'm saying, because every file got corrupted I had on it. I have to re-record gameplay as well and everything like that. Albeit for me it's just another excuse to boot up Dark Souls 1, so it's not that bad. But it's a bit annoying. It is what it is. But thank you so much for watching. Regardless of anything that happened, you are wonderful. Thank you for spending some time with me. I hope you got something out of this video. I know I had a lot of fun making it. I can't promise if the next video I'm making is gonna be on Dark Souls 2. I will fully admit I am working on a video on Dark Souls 2. It's currently taking up about 255 gigs for me. Because I think it's an incredibly special series that I want to cover more of. And yeah, I'm having fun with that, but I don't know if that's gonna be the next video or the video after that, because I do want to do, all achievements gotten and everything like that in that one as well. Just because that way I can say I have done enough to feel like I can sort of say that, not that my opinion is valid, I think your opinion is valid regardless of how much you've done, but I think I can say that I've sort of been closer to mastering the game. And that I think is really nice, and plus I think it's just a cool little challenge to put for myself. And exactly the same rules will apply for that. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, please remember to do the YouTube stuff. It really does help with discoverability on YouTube. Like, by you engaging with the video, I essentially get a high chance of being recommended and so on. So if you care and if you want to and all of that, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And that's it for me for this time. I will catch you all later. Have a wonderful evening, or morning, or night, depending on where you're from. Just have a good time, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.